Welcome to Sleepy Stories. Get comfortable, close your eyes if you like. Tonight, we're going to visit 4 places that don't exist anymore. 4 civilizations that rose, built something extraordinary, and then, for reasons that range from conquest to mystery, fell silent. You won't need to remember any of this. There's no test. No one is checking. Just listen and let your mind wander through places most people have forgotten. We'll start somewhere hot, very hot, and you're going to have to carry something heavy. The year is roughly 2560 BC. You are standing on the Giza Plateau, just west of the Nile, and the air is already warm, even though the sun has barely cleared the horizon. In front of you is the largest construction site on Earth. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, though you wouldn't call it that, because Khufu is a living god, and you do not say his name casually. You are one of approximately 20,000 workers, not slaves. That is a myth that stuck around for 2,000 years, thanks to a Greek historian called Herodotus, who got it wrong. You are a farmer. The Nile is flooding, which means you cannot work your land, which means the pharaoh has called you here for your annual labor service. This is your job for the next 3 months. You will be fed, housed, given medical care and beer. Quite a lot of beer, actually. But first, you need to survive today. You wake up in a long, narrow barracks shared with 40 other men. The sleeping platform is hard-packed mud with a thin reed mat on top. There is no pillow. You've been using your folded linen kilt, which means it's creased and slightly damp with sweat. Your back hurts. It hurt yesterday too. It will hurt tomorrow. This is the baseline state of your body for the duration of this project. Breakfast arrives, and this is where things get surprisingly good. You receive 2 loaves of bread, a portion of dried fish, some onions, and a large clay jug of beer. The bread is dense and gritty. The grit comes from the sand that blows into everything, including the millstones that ground the flour. Archaeologists who have studied the teeth of pyramid workers found them worn almost flat by their mid-30s. The bread is slowly sanding down your teeth with every meal. The beer, though, the beer is important. It's thick, slightly sweet, low in alcohol, and packed with nutrients. It's closer to a liquid bread than anything you'd recognize as beer. The workers receive 4 to 5 liters of it per day. This is not a perk, it's fuel. The calorie demands of this work are enormous, and the beer is the most efficient delivery system available. You drink, you eat, you fold your kilt neatly, you only have 2, and laundry day is every 10 days. Then you step outside into the morning light, and the heat hits you like opening an oven door. It is already 32 degrees. By midday it will be 43, and you are about to spend the next 10 hours moving stone. Your work gang has 20 men. You have a name. All the gangs do. Yours is called Friends of Khufu. The gang next to yours is called Drunkards of Angkor. These names are real. Archaeologists found them painted in red ochre on blocks deep inside the pyramid, graffiti left by work crews who knew nobody would ever see it. Today your gang is on quarry duty. The limestone quarry is right here on the plateau, only a few hundred meters from the pyramid itself. This is one of the engineering decisions that makes the whole project possible. The Egyptians didn't haul most of the stone from far away. They carved it out of the ground right next to where it needed to go. The process is brutal and elegant at the same time. First, a line is chiseled into the rock face to mark the outline of the block. Then narrow channels are cut along that line using copper chisels, the hardest metal available to you. Copper is soft compared to modern steel, and the chisels blunt quickly. A dedicated team of sharpeners sits at the edge of the quarry, rehammering chisels all day long. Once the channels are deep enough, wooden wedges are driven into them, and soaked with water. The wood expands. Slowly, over hours, the pressure builds until, with a deep, satisfying crack, that you can feel through the soles of your feet. The block separates from the bedrock. The average block weighs about 2.5 tons. That's roughly the weight of a large car. And today, your gang needs to extract, dress, and move 4 of them. You wrap your hands in strips of linen. The skin on your palms is already thick with calluses, but the sharp limestone edges will cut through callus if you're careless. The man next to you is missing the tip of his right index finger. He lost it last week. The medical team stitched the wound closed, packed it with honey, which, as it turns out, is a genuinely effective antiseptic, and he was back at work 2 days later. You grip the chisel, the copper is warm from the sun, and you begin to strike. By midday, the quarry is an oven. The pale limestone reflects the sun back up at you, so you're being cooked from above and below simultaneously. A water carrier comes past every 20 minutes. You drink until your stomach aches, and 20 minutes later you're thirsty again. Your gang's 4 blocks are cut and dressed. Now comes the part that people always ask about. How did they move them? The answer, like most things about this project, is simpler and more impressive than you'd expect. Wooden sleds, ropes, ramps, and a trick with water. The block sits on a heavy wooden sled. 2 columns of men stand ahead of it, holding thick ropes woven from papyrus fiber. At the front, one man has a single job, pouring water onto the sand directly ahead of the sled. Not a lot, just enough to bind the sand grains together. This reduces the friction by almost exactly half. Experiments have confirmed this. The Egyptians figured it out 4,500 years before anyone wrote down the physics. You lean into the rope, 20 men pulling together, timing their efforts to a chant. The overseer calls the rhythm. You pull. The sled moves. It moves about as fast as a slow walk, but it moves. The ramp rises at roughly a 7-degree angle. This is steep enough to make progress, gentle enough that the sled doesn't slide backwards. The surface of the ramp is packed mud mixed with crushed limestone, a surface hard enough to take the weight, but smooth enough for the water trick to work. You pull, your feet slip, the man behind you steadies you with a hand on your back. You pull again. The block creeps upward, 1 step at a time, towards the growing face of the pyramid. By the time your 4 blocks are placed, the sun is low, and every muscle in your body feels like it's been wrung out and hung to dry. Your hands are raw through the linen wraps. Your shoulders have rope burns. Your knees ache from the ramp. But the block is in place, and it will be in place for 4,500 years. The working day ends when the light does. There are no torches on the ramp. Fire and dust don't mix. As the sun dips below the western desert, the overseer calls the halt, and 20,000 men begin walking back towards the workers' village. The village is a proper settlement. Archaeologists found it in 1990, buried under centuries of sand, and what they uncovered was remarkable. Not a slave camp, a town, with bakeries, breweries, a copper workshop, a fish processing facility, medical clinics, and even a building that appears to have been an administrative office for tracking worker rotations. Dinner is the best part of the day. Tonight it's beef. Not every night, but the animal bone records show that pyramid workers ate better than most Egyptians. Cattle, sheep, goat, fish, bread, beer, dates, figs. The pharaoh fed his workforce well because a malnourished worker is a useless worker, and this project is on a deadline. You sit with your gang. The drunkards of Angkor are at the next fire. There's a rivalry. It's friendly. Last week they moved more blocks than you. This week you're ahead. The overseers track these numbers on papyrus tallies, and bragging rights matter when you're 3 months from home. A man from another gang limps past, supported by 2 friends. His ankle is swollen to twice its normal size, probably a fracture. The medical team will splint it tonight. The archaeological evidence for medical care on this site is remarkable. Healed fractures, successfully amputated limbs, treated infections. These workers were valuable. You don't throw away a trained quarryman because he broke his ankle. Someone starts singing. It's a simple melody, a call and response that you've heard 100 times. You join in, the fire crackles, the beer is warm, your body aches in ways you didn't know were possible. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. And the day after that, and the day after that, for roughly 20 years, until the pyramid is finished and the pharaoh is sealed inside the most ambitious building project in the history of the world. One morning, near the end of your rotation, your overseer assigns your gang to the upper courses. The pyramid is now over 100 meters tall. The ramp spirals around its face, narrowing as it climbs. You climb for 20 minutes. The wind picks up, the air is cooler here, the first cool air you've felt in weeks. Below you, the workers' village looks like a child's model. The Nile is a silver ribbon laid across green velvet. Beyond the green, the desert stretches in every direction, flat and featureless, to the edge of the world. You are standing on the tallest structure on Earth. It will hold that record for nearly 4,000 years. Nothing built by human hands will be taller until Lincoln Cathedral's spire is completed in 1311 AD. From up here, you can see the entire project at once. The quarry, pockmarked and pale, the ramps, crawling with ant-sized figures, the harbour where boats from Aswan deliver the granite for the inner chambers, blocks weighing up to 80 tons, floated 500 miles down the river. The precision is almost offensive. The base of the pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter length. The sides are aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. They achieved this with plumb lines, water channels, and the stars. No lasers, no GPS, no computers, just extraordinary patience and a civilization that believed with total conviction that getting this right mattered more than anything. You will never see the finished product. The outer casing, smooth white Tura limestone polished to a mirror finish, will be added after you've gone home. When it's complete, the pyramid will gleam so brightly in the sun that it can be seen from the mountains of modern-day Israel. But that's not for you. Your job is the rough blocks, the invisible structure, the bones of the thing buried under the skin. You place your hand flat against the warm limestone. It's smooth where your gang dressed it. You helped put this here, and it will still be here long after every empire that follows yours has turned to dust. So why? Why did 20,000 people spend 20 years building a tomb for one man? The obvious answer is religion. The pharaoh was a living god. His tomb was a machine for resurrection, a structure designed to launch his soul into the afterlife, where he would join the gods and ensure the Nile flooded on schedule, the crops grew, and Egypt survived. But there's a less obvious answer, and it might be more interesting. The pyramid was a nation-building project. Before the pyramids, Egypt was a collection of loosely connected regions with local loyalties. The pyramid project pulled workers from every corner of the kingdom, mixed them together, fed them, gave them a shared purpose, and sent them home with stories. It was, in a very real sense, the thing that made Egypt feel like one country. The graffiti supports this. Friends of Khufu, drunkards of Menkore. These aren't the marks of slaves. They're the marks of men who took pride in what they were doing, who competed with each other, who wanted to be remembered. And in a way, they are, not by name, we don't know your name, but the block you placed is still there. It has been rained on, baked, shaken by earthquakes, and climbed by tourists. It has watched the Roman Empire rise and fall. It was already ancient when Cleopatra was born, and it is still standing. Not bad for 3 months' work. Now let's go somewhere completely different. Close your eyes again if they've drifted open. The year is 1518. You are standing in a wooden canoe on the edge of Lake Texcoco in the Valley of Mexico, and in front of you is a city that, at this exact moment, is one of the 5 largest in the world. Tenochtitlan, home to somewhere between 200,000 and 400,000 people, larger than London, larger than Paris, larger than any city in Spain, which is relevant because in roughly 18 months, the Spanish are going to arrive and destroy it so completely that for centuries people will argue about whether it was even real. But right now, today, it is very real, and it is extraordinary. The city is built on an island in the middle of a lake, not beside a lake, in it. The Aztecs, or more accurately, the Mexica, arrived in this valley as refugees, and the island was the only land nobody else wanted. So they took it, and over 200 years, they turned it into the capital of an empire. 3 enormous causeways connect the island to the mainland. Each is wide enough for 10 men to walk abreast. Aqueducts run alongside them, carrying fresh water from mountain springs. The lake around the city is dotted with chinampas, floating gardens built from layers of mud, vegetation, and wooden stakes that produce the food that feeds the population. Your canoe drifts towards the southern causeway. A man in an embroidered cloak passes you in a larger boat, seated under a canopy of feathers. He doesn't look at you. You are nobody. This is a city with strict social hierarchy, and the cloaks tell you everything about who matters. The market at Tlatelolco is the beating heart of Mesoamerican trade. When the Spanish conquistador Bernal Díaz del Castillo first saw it, he wrote that some of his soldiers who had been to Constantinople and Rome said they had never seen a marketplace so large, so well organized, or so full of people. Between 40 and 60,000 people visit this market every day, every single day. It covers an area the size of several football pitches, and it sells everything. You walk past a stall selling obsidian blades. Obsidian, volcanic glass, can be knapped to an edge sharper than a modern surgical scalpel. The Aztecs don't have iron or steel, but they have obsidian, and in some ways it's better. The blades shimmer black and green in the light. You can't afford one. The currency here is cacao beans, actual chocolate beans. A good avocado costs 1 bean, a turkey egg costs 3, a small rabbit costs 30, a cotton cloak, the kind worn by merchants and minor nobles, costs about 100. If you want one of those elaborately feathered cloaks worn by the man who passed you on the canal, you're looking at several thousand beans. That is quite literally a small fortune in chocolate. Judges sit on raised platforms at the corners of the market. They settle disputes on the spot. There's no haggling. Prices are regulated. Cheating is a serious offense. Diaz wrote that the market was quieter than he expected for its size, because everything ran with a kind of disciplined calm that impressed him deeply. You buy a tamale from a woman cooking over a small clay stove. It's maize dough stuffed with turkey and chili, wrapped in a corn husk and steamed. It costs you 2 cacao beans. It's delicious. It's also, give or take some refinements, the same food that people in Mexico City are eating 500 years later in the exact same valley. The Aztecs are obsessed with 2 things, beauty and blood. These are not contradictions. In their world, they are the same impulse, the belief that the universe requires constant maintenance, and that maintenance requires sacrifice. Let's start with the beauty. Aztec poetry is extraordinary. They write about flowers and friendship and the brevity of life with a tenderness that would be at home in any modern literary journal. Their gardens are legendary. The Emperor Montezuma's botanical garden contains plants collected from every corner of the empire, tended by a dedicated staff of gardeners. There is no equivalent in Europe, nothing even close. Cleanliness is a cultural obsession. The average Aztec bathes at least once a day. The Spanish, who bathe perhaps twice a year, find this bewildering and slightly suspicious. Aztec streets are swept daily. Human waste is collected in canoes and transported out of the city to be used as fertilizer. The public toilets are cleaner than anything in 16th century Europe. And then there is the other part. The Templo Mayor, the great double pyramid at the center of the city, is a site of human sacrifice. The Aztecs believed that the sun requires human blood to rise each morning. Without it, the fifth sun, the current age of the world, will end and everything will be destroyed. The scale is debated by historians. The Spanish exaggerated for propaganda purposes. The Aztecs themselves may have inflated the numbers for intimidation, but the practice is real, and it is woven into the fabric of daily life in ways that are genuinely difficult to comprehend from a modern perspective. What's striking is that the same culture that writes poetry about the beauty of a single flower also builds skull racks outside its temples. The same people who bathe daily and tend botanical gardens also believe, with total sincerity, that the universe will collapse without blood. You don't have to resolve this, you just have to sit with it. History is rarely comfortable. When Hernan Cortés and his 600 soldiers first see Tenochtitlan, they don't believe it's real. Bernal Diaz writes, "We were amazed and said that it was like the enchantments they tell of in the legend of Amadis, on account of the great towers and temples and buildings rising from the water, and all built of masonry. And some of our soldiers even asked whether the things that we saw were not a dream." It's worth sitting with that sentence. Battle-hardened soldiers who have crossed an ocean, fought their way through hostile territory, and survived diseases that killed half their companions, and their first reaction to this city is to wonder if they're dreaming. Montezuma receives them as guests. He houses them in a palace. He feeds them. He shows them the city. Cortés writes a letter to the King of Spain describing the market, the aqueducts, the temples, the zoo, the aviary. Yes, there is an aviary, with hundreds of species of birds from across the empire, and his tone is one of barely suppressed awe. He also begins planning how to destroy all of it. The details of what follows are not suitable for helping you fall asleep. What matters for tonight is this. Within 2 years, Tenochtitlan will be razed. The temples will be pulled down, the causeways will be broken, the lake will eventually be drained, and Mexico City will be built on top of the ruins so thoroughly that for centuries the Aztec capital will exist only in written accounts, dismissed by some European historians as exaggeration or myth. It wasn't myth, it was here, all of it. Here is what was lost. A city that solved the problem of feeding 400,000 people without wheeled vehicles or draft animals. A medical tradition that used over 1,000 catalogued plants for healing. A pharmacopoeia that European doctors would not match for 2 centuries. A calendar more accurate than the one the Spanish brought with them. Poetry, architecture, astronomy. A civilization that, for all its contradictions, was one of the great achievements of the human species. And here is what was built on top of it. Mexico City, 22 million people living in a valley that was once a lake, on foundations that are slowly sinking because the aquifer beneath them is being drained faster than it can refill. The cathedral in the central plaza tilts visibly. Its foundations rest on the soft lakebed that once held the Chinampas. In 1978, an electrical worker digging a trench near the cathedral struck a carved stone disc. It turned out to be a massive sculpture of the Aztec moon goddess Coyolxauhqui, and it led to the excavation of the Templo Mayor, the Great Pyramid, buried directly beneath the modern city. The stones are still there, under the streets, under the pipes, under the foundations of colonial churches. The city that Cortés said didn't look real is still there, if you dig deep enough. Now we're going somewhere quieter, much quieter. The year is approximately 2000 BC, give or take a century. The dating is uncertain because the people who built this place left no records that anyone alive can read. You are standing in Mohenjo-daro. It's a city of roughly 40,000 people in the Indus River Valley, in what is now southern Pakistan, and it is one of the strangest places in the ancient world. Strange because of what's missing. No palaces, no monumental tombs, no evidence of a king, a pharaoh, an emperor, or any single ruler at all. No weapons beyond basic hunting tools, no fortifications, no murals depicting conquest or warfare. Just a city, an extraordinarily well-planned city, with straight streets, standardized brick sizes, covered drainage systems, and indoor plumbing, in 2000 BC, while Stonehenge is still being built and the alphabet hasn't been invented yet. Nobody knows who governed this place. Nobody knows what language they spoke. Nobody knows what they called themselves. The script they used, and they used it extensively, has never been deciphered. This is a civilization that rivals Egypt and Mesopotamia in scale and sophistication, and we know almost nothing about it. Let that sit for a moment. The first thing you notice is the grid. The streets of Mohenjo-daro are laid out in a precise north-south, east-west pattern. The main roads are about 10 meters wide, broad enough for 2 ox carts to pass. The side streets are narrower but equally straight. This isn't organic growth. This isn't a city that sprawled outward from a market or a temple. This is planned. Somebody, some group, some governing body, whose nature we can only guess at, sat down and designed this city before it was built. The bricks are standardized. Every brick in the city has a ratio of 1:4, 1 unit thick, 2 units wide, 4 units long. This is true across the entire Indus Valley civilization, in cities hundreds of miles apart. The same ratio, the same system of weights and measures, a standardization that implies a level of coordination that frankly shouldn't be possible without some form of centralized authority. And yet there's no palace, no throne room, no grand administrative building. The largest structure in the city is a communal bath, which, when you think about it, is a very interesting priority. The Great Bath is 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and 2.5 meters deep. It's waterproofed with a layer of natural bitumen, tar, applied between the inner and outer courses of brick. The engineering is superb. 5,000 years later, the waterproofing still works. Steps descend into the pool on 2 sides. Around the pool is a covered walkway with small rooms, possibly changing rooms, possibly ritual preparation spaces. Nobody is entirely sure what the bath was for. The leading theory is ritual purification. If that's correct, it makes the Great Bath the oldest known public religious structure in the world. Not a temple to a god, but a place to cleanse yourself, literally and spiritually, before engaging with whatever the Indus Valley people considered sacred. But here's what's quietly remarkable. Every house in Mohenjo-daro also has a bathroom, with a drain, connected to the city's covered sewer system. The sewers run beneath the streets, with inspection hatches at regular intervals for maintenance. In 2000 BC, London won't have a proper sewer system until 1865. That's nearly 4,000 years later, after a cholera epidemic that killed tens of thousands of people, because the richest city in the world at that time still hadn't figured out what Mohenjo-daro had solved before the wheel was widely adopted. You walk along the main drain. It's covered with flat stone slabs. Beneath them, you can hear water flowing. The system works by gravity. The streets are subtly graded so that wastewater flows downward and out of the city. The gradient is so gentle you can't see it with your eyes, but it's there. Someone designed this. Someone who understood fluid dynamics, urban sanitation, and public health, 4,000 years before germ theory. Scattered throughout Mohenjo-daro are small soapstone seals. usually about 3 centimeters square. Each one has an animal carved on it, often a bull-like creature with a single horn, sometimes an elephant or a rhinoceros, and above the animal, a row of symbols. There are about 400 distinct symbols. This is too many for an alphabet and too few for a pictographic system like Chinese. It is almost certainly a writing system, and nobody can read it. This is one of the great unsolved puzzles of archaeology. The Indus Valley script has resisted decipherment for over a century. There is no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual text that bridges the gap between these symbols and a language we understand. Hundreds of scholars have tried. Proposals have linked the script to Dravidian languages, to Sanskrit, to Sumerian, to systems that no longer exist. None have achieved consensus. The texts are too short. The longest known inscription is only 26 symbols, which makes statistical analysis almost impossible. Think about what that means. An entire civilization, one that spanned 1 million square kilometers, larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, and we cannot read a single word they wrote. We don't know what they called their city. We don't know what they called themselves. Mohenjo-daro is a modern Sindhi name, meaning mound of the dead. Whatever the people who lived here called their home, that name has been lost so completely that we don't even have a wrong guess. They had something to say. They carved it into stone, pressed it into clay, stamped it onto seals that were traded across the ancient world, and we will probably never know what it was. Around 1900 BC, something begins to go wrong. The cities of the Indus Valley don't collapse dramatically. There is no invasion, no fire, no conquest. The evidence, and this is what makes it so eerie, suggests a slow decline. Buildings fall into disrepair and aren't rebuilt. The careful urban planning starts to fray. Houses are subdivided, the drains clog and nobody clears them. The most likely explanation is environmental. The rivers shifted. The Indus Valley civilization depended on a network of rivers for agriculture, trade, and drinking water. Geological evidence suggests that around this time, tectonic activity and changes in monsoon patterns caused the Ghaggar-Hakra river system, a major tributary network, to dry up or change course. If your entire civilization is built on the assumption that a river will be where it has always been, and then the river moves, you have a problem that no amount of excellent plumbing can solve. People didn't die all at once. They left over decades, over centuries. The population dispersed, eastward towards the Ganges plain, southward towards the coast. The cities emptied. The drains stopped flowing. The bricks began to crumble. And then the sand came, layer by layer, century by century. The wind buried Mohenjo-daro until there was nothing left but a low mound in the Sindhi plain. It stayed buried for nearly 4,000 years until a British archaeologist named John Marshall began excavating in 1922 and realized he'd found something that rewrote the history of human civilization. 4,000 years of silence, 4,000 years of forgetting, a city with running water and covered sewers, buried under dirt while the world above it built empires, fought wars, invented the printing press and split the atom. Mohenjo-daro today is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The ruins stand in the open air, slowly eroding. The bricks that survived 4 millennia underground are now exposed to rain, wind, and the salt that rises from the water table beneath them. Ironically, the excavation that revealed the city is also what's destroying it. There's a particular quality to the silence here. It's not the silence of an empty room. It's the silence of a place where something was happening for a very long time and then stopped. You can walk the streets, they're still there. The main roads, the side lanes, the outlines of houses. You can stand in the Great Bath and see the steps, the drain holes, the bitumen waterproofing. You can hold one of the standardized bricks and feel its weight, its proportions, the fingerprints of the person who made it still faintly visible in the clay. And you can look at the script on the seals and know that someone, a real person, with thoughts and worries and a name you'll never know, sat down and carefully carved those symbols because they meant something important enough to carve into stone. We can't read it. We may never read it. And that's the kind of loss that's hard to describe because it's not dramatic. It's not a burning library or a sacked city. It's just silence. Where there used to be a language, there is now silence. Last story, the quietest one. Close your eyes. The year is approximately 1150 AD. You are in the jungle of what is now Cambodia, and you have been walking for an hour through trees so tall and dense that the sky is just a rumor. And then the trees part, and in front of you is Angkor Wat. It is the largest religious structure ever built, larger than any cathedral, any mosque, any temple, anywhere on earth. Its outer wall encloses an area of over 200 hectares. Its central tower rises 65 meters above the forest floor, and it was built, stone by stone, in roughly 35 years. The Khmer Empire, which built it, is at this moment one of the most powerful civilizations in Southeast Asia. Its capital, Angkor, has a population approaching 1 million people, making it arguably the largest city on Earth. And almost nobody in Europe, the Middle East, or China knows it exists. The Khmer Empire runs on water. This is the single most important thing to understand about Angkor. Everything else, the temples, the art, the power, the 1 million people, all of it depends on water. The monsoon in Cambodia is dramatic. For half the year, rain comes in torrents that turn the landscape into a shallow lake. For the other half, almost no rain falls, and the land dries to cracked earth. The challenge is not having too little water, it's having it at the wrong time. The Khmer solved this with the largest pre-industrial water management system ever built. 2 enormous reservoirs, the West Baray and the East Baray, together hold over 70 million cubic meters of water. That's enough to fill roughly 28,000 Olympic swimming pools. Canals distribute this water across the landscape through a network so intricate that archaeologists are still mapping it. The result is 3 rice harvests per year instead of 1, and 3 rice harvests per year is what feeds 1 million people in the middle of a jungle. It's tempting to focus on the temples, they're spectacular, but the reservoirs are the real miracle. Without them, Angkor is a nice collection of statues in an empty forest. With them, it's the heart of an empire. The approach is designed to overwhelm you. This is deliberate. You cross a moat that's 190 meters wide. The water is still. The 5 towers of the temple are reflected so perfectly that for a moment you can't tell which is the building and which is the reflection. This is not an accident. The architects understood that the moat wasn't just a defensive feature, it was a mirror. A stone causeway leads across the moat to the western entrance. It's lined with balustrades carved to look like Naga serpents, multi-headed mythical snakes that in Hindu-Buddhist cosmology churn the ocean of milk to create the elixir of immortality. The entire temple is a model of the universe. The central tower represents Mount Meru, home of the gods. The surrounding towers are the mountain peaks at the edges of the world. The moat is the cosmic ocean. You're not just entering a building, you're walking into a 3-dimensional map of how the Khmer understood reality. Inside, the walls are covered with bas-reliefs, carved stone panels stretching for hundreds of meters. One section depicts the churning of the ocean of milk, with gods and demons pulling a serpent wrapped around a mountain to churn the sea. Another shows the armies of King Suryavarman II, the temple's builder, marching to war, each soldier individually detailed, each elephant distinct. You could spend a week studying the carvings and not see them all. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The stone is sandstone, quarried from a mountain 50 kilometers away and transported to the site by canal. Every surface has been carved, polished, and fitted with a precision that leaves no visible mortar. Stand still for a moment. The stone is cool under your hand. The air smells of rain and old stone and the flowers that grow in the cracks. Light comes in through narrow windows and falls in sharp lines across the carved walls. This is what human beings can do when they have enough rice, enough water, enough time, and a sufficiently grand idea. Let's go back to the water, because the water is the story. The West Baray is 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. It was dug by hand. Every cubic meter of earth was moved by human labor. No machines, no draft animals large enough for the task. The embankments are raised earth, compacted and maintained by dedicated teams. The system is gravity-fed. Water flows from the Barays into primary canals, then secondary canals, then tertiary channels that feed individual rice paddies. The gradients are managed with extraordinary precision. Too steep, and the water erodes the canal banks. Too shallow, and it doesn't flow. There are sluice gates, simple wooden structures that can be raised or lowered to control flow. During the monsoon, the Barays fill. During the dry season, the gates open and the stored water flows outward, keeping the paddies wet, keeping the rice growing, keeping the empire fed. At its peak, the system irrigates over 1,000 square kilometers of farmland. It supports the densest population in the pre-industrial world outside of China, and it works continuously, reliably, for over 600 years. 600 years, that's longer than the United States has existed, longer than the British Empire lasted, longer than the gap between the Renaissance and now. And then, slowly, it begins to fail. The decline of Angkor is not a single event. It's a process that takes roughly 2 centuries, from the late 1300s to the late 1500s. The causes are still debated. Invasions from the Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya certainly played a role. Angkor was sacked in 1431, and the capital was eventually moved south to Phnom Penh. But the archaeological evidence suggests something deeper. The water system was failing. Sediment analysis from the Barays shows that the canals were silting up faster than they could be maintained. Tree ring data reveals a series of severe droughts in the 14th and 15th centuries, followed by unusually intense monsoons. The system was designed for a specific range of conditions, and the climate was moving outside that range. When the water system fails, the rice fails. When the rice fails, you can't feed 1 million people. When you can't feed 1 million people, they leave. And when they leave, there's nobody to maintain the canals, which means the water system fails faster, which means more people leave. It's a feedback loop, and once it starts, it's very hard to stop. The population dispersed, the temples emptied, the monks left, and the jungle, patient, relentless, indifferent, began to take it back. Roots pushed through stone, vines wrapped around carved faces, trees grew on top of walls, their roots threading down through the masonry like fingers. Within a few generations, many of the smaller temples were entirely swallowed by the forest. Only the largest structures, Angkor Wat, the Bayon Ta Prohm, were too massive to disappear completely. Ta Prohm is the temple they left to the jungle. When French explorers rediscovered Angkor in the 1860s, most of the temples were cleared and restored, but Ta Prohm was deliberately left as they found it, a monument to what happens when human ambition meets the patience of trees. The silk cotton trees here are enormous. Their roots begin high on the temple walls, flowing downward and outward like frozen waterfalls of wood. They've prized apart stone blocks that weigh several tons. They've lifted walls, They've threaded through windows and wrapped around carved Apsara dancers as if embracing them. The strange thing is that the trees are also what's holding the temple together. Pull out the roots now, and the walls would collapse. The stone and the wood have become one structure, neither able to stand without the other. There's a lesson in there somewhere, but tonight is not the night for lessons. Tonight is for images. So just hold this one. A doorway in a temple built 900 years ago, framed on both sides by the roots of a tree that began growing 3 centuries after the last person walked through it. Light comes through the canopy in broken shafts. A bird sings. The stone is warm where the sun touches it, and cool where the shade falls. This is what time looks like when you let it run. The Khmer didn't build Angkor to last forever. They built it because the building mattered. The act of creation was the point, the offering, the devotion, the transformation of raw stone into something sacred. And when they were finished, and the water stopped, and the rice dried up, and the people left, the jungle accepted the offering and folded it gently into itself. Four places, 4 stories, 4 civilizations that built something extraordinary and then, one way or another, stopped. The Egyptians built a mountain of stone to launch a soul into the afterlife. The Mexica built a city on water to feed the sun with blood. The Indus Valley people built a city of drains and bricks, so precisely that we still can't explain how they coordinated it. The Khmer built a model of the universe, and then let the jungle take it back. None of them knew about each other. None of them knew about you. But you know about them. That's the strange part of being alive right now. You can hold all 4 of these stories in your mind simultaneously. You can lie here, in the dark, and think about a quarryman's hands in 2560 BC, and a tamale bought with cacao beans in 1518, and a drain that's been flowing for 4,000 years, and a tree growing through a temple doorway. These are not small things. These are the things that people did when they had enough time and enough conviction, and the fact that most of them are forgotten, that is not a tragedy. That's just how time works. Things are built, things fall, the sand comes, or the jungle comes, or the water comes. And somewhere, right now, someone is building something new, and in 4,000 years someone will find it, brush off the dust, and wonder who they were. Sleep well. We'll be here when you wake up.